Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Past Quirks. Now obviously at present the lockdown is a very depressing time for a lot of us. However, for those avid readers among you out there who are looking for the next big challenge in terms of books and who want something history based, whether or not it's fiction or non-fiction, I've actually had a few fans of the Past Quirks series get in touch with me recently to actually recommend what they have recently been reading to you. First off, we've had Mr Michael Farley, who's been in touch, and he's actually recommended a book by Laurie Lee entitled Cider with Rosie, which is a memoir from the early 20th century about a small village. He said it's beautifully written, evokes a period in English rural history when what would have been the norm for about 1,000 years suddenly came to an end. He's described it as awesome, beautiful, shocking and funny. Apparently he loves it very, very much. If you want something sort of again 20th century, then Mr Theo Wilkie has recommended a non-fiction book by Damien Lewis entitled Hunting Hitler's Nukes, and apparently it's about a raid by the Norwegian SOE to destroy the heavy water factory, and an amazing story of courage and survival that saved everyone from Nazi nuclear ambition. If you want something a bit older, I'd like to pop in a recommendation of my own. At the age of about 15, I picked up the book Flashman by George MacDonald Fraser, and didn't realise it's part of a series of 12. He's actually the character of Flashman. He's a bit of a cad, a bit of a nasty sort of person really, and a coward. He sometimes manages to get himself into all these sorts of dilemmas, and he always manages to get out on top as the hero, which is quite odd. But of the series though, by George MacDonald Fraser, one of my favourite ones is Royal Flash, which actually focuses, again like a lot of the books, on his memoirs, looking back on his life in the army in the 19th century and all the different places he goes to. This one's obviously fiction, however it's one of the only fictional books I've read that's actually got endnotes. If you like 19th century Europe, he meets people like Lola Montez, the Spanish dancer, and also Otto von Bismarck, a chap who unified Germany in the 1870s. It's just absolutely fascinating. If you want to go a little bit further back, notably to the Middle Ages, we've had a few recommendations here. Mr Theo Wilkie has recommended actually a series of historical novels by Con Eagledon, simply called The Wars of the Roses. Simply recommended from the point of view that it's an awesome period and they're really well written. In addition to that, I've actually got my own recommendation of a book I recently finished called The Greatest Night, a non-fiction by Thomas Asbridge. It's all about the life of William Marshall. It's actually based upon the historical text, The History of William Marshall. I won't give it away, but he's an absolutely fascinating character, said to have been the inspiration for Lancelot in the Arthurian legends. He served under 5 different kings in the late 12th and early 13th centuries. And you can't believe this guy actually did all these things in his life. Absolutely incredible. So I'd recommend that one. Mrs Hilary Wilkie has recommended a Sharon Penman book, again historical fiction, The Sunne in Splendour, which is a well-researched one all about Richard III and Edward IV, and apparently the book that first got her interested in the Plantagenets. However, if you prefer your ancient history, then Mr Ian Timothy Franklin has recommended a book by Richard HINGLEY entitled Londinium, a Biography, that he describes as a one-stop shop for anyone interested in Roman London that does an amazing job of putting together excavation evidence, differing interpretations and points of view covering the entire period of Roman government in Britain. Now this is quite interesting because obviously among a lot of his peers he's known for being a big Tudor enthusiast. So it's only a very short podcast, as you can tell here. So thank you very much for everyone who's contributed. Thank you very much, Mr Wilkie, Mr Franklin, Mr Farley, Mrs Wilkie. Happy reading everyone, enjoy.